Justin Baldoni thought he had the upper hand. His legal strategy seemed airtight. His team was confident. But in one devastating courtroom move, Blake Lively's attorneys just flipped this entire case on its head. We're talking explosive new evidence, damning communications, details so shocking that even legal experts are calling this a game changer, a moment that could define the entire outcome of one of Hollywood's most high-profile battles. This isn't just a celebrity lawsuit anymore. This is a masterclass in legal strategy, reputation warfare, and what happens when powerful people underestimate their opponents. The documents are out. The truth is unraveling. And the fallout? Nobody is ready for it. If you want the full breakdown of everything that just dropped, smash that like button and let's get into it. Now, I have a comprehensive picture of the full case timeline and all major developments. Here is the fully crafted 2,000-word script. So here's where we need to start. Because if you only caught headlines about this case, you have no idea how deep this rabbit hole actually goes. This isn't just a story about two co-stars who didn't get along on a movie set. This is a story about power, secrets, deleted messages, courtroom warfare, a Taylor Swift conspiracy theory, and one of the most dramatic legal battles Hollywood has ever produced. And by the time we get to the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why Blake Lively's legal team didn't just win moves. They may have redefined how this entire saga ends. Let's go back to where it all began, because context is everything here. It was December 2024 when Blake Lively formally filed a lawsuit against Justin Baldoni, her co-star and director on the film It Ends With Us. She accused Baldoni of sexual harassment and orchestrating an elaborate smear campaign against her, a coordinated effort, she claimed, designed to damage her reputation and silence her before she could speak out. These were serious, serious allegations. The kind that don't just end careers, they end legacies. And Baldoni's team fired back immediately, denying everything. But here's where it got complicated. Baldoni sued Lively and Ryan Reynolds for defamation in January 2025. And as if that weren't enough, that same day, he also sued the New York Times for libel, claiming the paper worked with Lively to smear him. So now you've got two Hollywood stars suing each other, one of them suing a major newspaper, and the entire entertainment industry watching with their jaws on the floor. This was no longer just a celebrity dispute. This had become a full-scale legal war. Now, early in 2025, both sides were trading blows in the press as much as in the courtroom. The judge overseeing the case even threatened to move up the trial date if the parties kept litigating in the press, warning both teams that the courtroom, not the media, was where this needed to be decided, but neither side could resist. Every few weeks, there was a new filing, a new leak, a new headline. The press was eating it up, and honestly, so was the public. So, then came the first major bombshell that shifted the balance of power. In court filings released on October 22, 2025, Blake Lively's legal team made a jaw-dropping accusation. They claimed the defendants had deliberately concealed critical data. But this wasn't some vague allegation about missing paperwork or misplaced emails. No, this was something far more calculated and far more damning. Lively's lawyers alleged that Baldoni and his inner circle knew litigation was coming as early as August 2024, and that they allegedly switched to the encrypted messaging app Signal specifically to auto-delete their communications. Think about what that means for a second. They're not saying the messages disappeared by accident. They're saying those messages were intentionally destroyed. Lively's legal team filed over 12 discovery motions against Baldoni's team, fighting tooth and nail for every document, every text, every scrap of communication that might shed light on what really happened behind the scenes. And in the process, they uncovered something that legal experts called extraordinary. Court-ordered depositions with former staffers' employees like Catherine Case and Brianna Butler revealed testimony about the Signal messaging strategy. These weren't anonymous sources. These were people who had been inside Baldoni's operation, and they were now testifying under oath about how communications were routed through an app specifically designed to leave no trace. Lively's attorneys didn't mince words in their filing. They wrote that the defendants were either destroying or failing to preserve relevant communication in real time, and specifically called out publicist Jen Abel, alleging she had conspired with others to orchestrate a smear campaign in secret, moving conversations to the auto-deleting platform to cover their tracks. That's not negligence. That's not a mistake. That is, if the allegations are true, a calculated and deliberate scheme to obstruct justice. Now let's talk about what this means legally, because this is where it gets really interesting. When one side in a lawsuit is found to have destroyed evidence, a judge can issue what's called an adverse inference instruction. That means the jury gets told, explicitly, to assume that whatever was in those deleted messages was harmful to the person who destroyed them. Legal experts noted that evidence destruction claims of this nature often reshape litigation outcomes entirely. You're no longer just asking a jury to decide who's telling the truth. You're telling them that one side tried to hide the truth, and that changes everything. But Blake Lively's legal team didn't stop there. If the evidence destruction filing was the earthquake, what came next was the aftershock. On May 19, 2025, Lively's lawyers filed a motion seeking sanctions, including attorneys' fees and costs, against Justin Baldoni's legal team. And they didn't just go after Baldoni. All plaintiffs, including producers Jamie Heath and Steve Sarowitz, along with publicists Melissa Nathan and Jennifer Abel and their lawyers, were also named in the motion. This was a sweeping, aggressive legal move that essentially said, everyone involved in this has been operating in bad faith, and now it's time to pay the price. What triggered this particular motion was something that many legal observers found extraordinary, even by the standards of this already extraordinary case. Baldoni's chief attorney, Brian Friedman, had made an allegation in a legal letter claiming that Blake Lively had been blackmailing none other than Taylor Swift, threatening to release her private text messages if Swift didn't publicly support her. Friedman claimed that a source very close to Taylor Swift had confirmed this information and that he had several phone calls with this source. He even noted in his filing that he had received a voicemail from someone closely linked to Swift and called them back the same day. Lively's attorneys didn't let this stand for a single moment. They fired back in a statement saying, "If you want to know why Justin Baldoni's lawyer pulled his latest inflammatory and defamatory media stunt, it might be because he knew that both he and his clients were about to be hit with sanctions motions based on his reckless decision to file multiple frivolous claims in federal court. They accused Friedman of treating federal court like a media playground and warned that there would be consequences. This is where you start to see the true nature of Lively's legal strategy. Her team wasn't just playing defense. They were playing a long, calculated, aggressive offense. Every move Baldoni's side made, Lively's lawyers had an answer, and not just an answer, but a counterattack designed to make the other side look reckless, dishonest, and increasingly desperate. And then came the ruling that changed the entire trajectory of the case. In June 2025, Judge Louis J. Lyman of the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York granted a motion to dismiss Baldoni's $400 million defamation lawsuit against Lively and Reynolds. The judge's reasoning was pointed and precise. He wrote that the Wayfarer parties had not alleged that Lively was responsible for any statements other than those in her formal complaint, and those statements were legally privileged. In other words, Baldoni's flagship legal weapon, the massive $400 million lawsuit that was supposed to be the centerpiece of his counter-narrative, was gone. Dismissed, done. His lawsuit against the New York Times was also dismissed on the same day. 2 lawsuits, 1 ruling, 1 devastating blow to Baldoni's legal position. For a man who had positioned himself as the wronged party, the victim of a coordinated smear, losing both suits in a single judicial decision was catastrophic. By early 2026, the case was headed toward a scheduled trial date of May 18th. On February 11, 2026, both stars arrived at a Manhattan federal courthouse for a court-ordered settlement conference. The talks reportedly lasted over 6 hours. Lively arrived solo, looking stern. Baldoni appeared with his wife, smiling as he left. But despite the optics, no settlement was reached that day. Baldoni's attorney told reporters they were looking forward to trial. That bravado, as it turned out, didn't last. Just 2 weeks before their scheduled trial date, Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni settled their nearly 2-year legal dispute. The announcement came through a joint statement from their legal teams. The terms were not publicly disclosed, and a source familiar with the matter confirmed to NBC News that no money changed hands. Baldoni's attorney, Brian Friedman, called it a victory for his client, but Lively's legal team had a very different characterization. This settlement is a resounding victory for Blake Lively, her attorneys Ezra Hudson and Michael Gottlieb stated bluntly. And the reason they could say that with such confidence came down to what was still left on the table. According to the settlement documents, the agreement was structured so that Lively could still seek to recover attorneys' fees and additional damages. And crucially, her attorney Sigrid McCauley explained that the settlement pulled back in Baldoni, Heath, Sarowitz, Jennifer Abel, Melissa Nathan, and all the Wayfarer parties, and that they waived their right to appeal. That's enormous. Whatever Judge Lyman decides on the remaining sanctions and fees issues becomes the final judgment, and Baldoni's side cannot drag it out with years of appeals. So what does all of this actually mean? Let's zoom out and look at the full picture. Justin Baldoni came into this legal battle with a $400 million defamation suit, a libel claim against the New York Times, and a public narrative positioning him as a man falsely accused. He had a high-profile attorney, a media strategy, and a website dedicated to his side of the story. He had, on paper, significant firepower, and over the course of roughly 18 months, Blake Lively's legal team dismantled it. Piece by piece, motion by motion, filing by filing, they exposed alleged evidence of destruction. They filed sanctions motions. They won the dismissal of the $400 million lawsuit. They secured a settlement that kept their client's ability to still pursue fees and damages. And they structured the resolution so that their opponents cannot tie things up in an appellate process for years. What this case ultimately reveals is something bigger than celebrity gossip. It's a masterclass in how a legal team can take control of a narrative, not through the press, but through the actual machinery of the justice system. While Baldoni's side was making headlines with Taylor Swift conspiracies and dramatic public statements, Lively's lawyers were quietly filing discovery motions, deposing witnesses, and building a case so airtight that by the time trial week arrived, the other side blinked. The story isn't completely over. The question of attorneys' fees and potential damages still remains before the court, and Judge Lyman will issue a final judgment that, thanks to the settlement's terms, cannot be appealed. Whatever that judgment says will be the last word on one of Hollywood's most explosive legal battles in recent memory. And if the trajectory of this case tells us anything, it's that Blake Lively's legal team has been several steps ahead the entire time. If this breakdown gave you the full picture you were looking for, hit that like button dash. It genuinely helps this channel and tells us you want more deep dives just like this one.